There are moments in life when everything you believed about yourself, everything you thought was solid and real, shatters into a million pieces right in front of hundreds of witnesses. For Ana Martinez, that moment came on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. But let me tell you something that will make your blood run cold. What happened to her that day wasn't just heartbreak. It was public execution. It was humiliation so deep, so cruel, that it would have destroyed most people forever. And yet what emerged from those ashes was something nobody could have predicted. Not the guests, not her family, and definitely not the man who thought he could break her. Because sometimes, when you hit rock bottom in front of everyone you know, the universe sends you something so unexpected, so dangerous, so absolutely impossible, that it changes everything. And I mean everything. This is the story of how a wedding planner lost everything she thought mattered and gained something far more valuable and terrifying than she ever imagined. This is the story of Ana and the man who would burn down his entire empire just to see her smile. Ana had spent 5 years building her reputation as one of the most sought-after wedding planners in the city. 5 years of creating perfect moments for other people. 5 years of transforming venues into dreamscapes, of coordinating every detail down to the last rose petal, of making brides feel like princesses and grooms feel like kings. She knew every florist, every caterer, every photographer worth their salt. She could turn a disaster into magic with just a phone call and her trademark calm smile. But here's the twisted irony that would haunt her for months. She had planned hundreds of weddings, orchestrated hundreds of perfect moments for strangers, yet she couldn't see the disaster coming in her own life. She couldn't read the signs that were written all over Daniel's face every time he looked at her. Or maybe she saw them and just refused to believe what they meant. Because Ana had this fatal flaw, this desperate need to believe in love, even when every piece of evidence pointed to betrayal. And Daniel knew it. God, did he know it? Daniel Reeves was everything Ana thought she wanted. Successful attorney, charming smile, the kind of confidence that filled a room. He had pursued her relentlessly 3 years ago, showing up at her office with coffee, leaving notes on her car, telling her she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. And Ana, who had spent her whole life feeling invisible, who had grown up as the quiet girl nobody noticed, who had built walls around her heart so high she thought they were unbreakable, she let those walls crumble for him. She believed him when he said she was special. She believed him when he promised forever. She believed him even when he started making small comments about her weight, about her clothes, about how she could be better if she just tried harder. Even when he started comparing her to other women, even when he made her feel small in 1,000 tiny ways that added up to one massive wound she refused to acknowledge. Because Ana had convinced herself that this was love, that his criticism meant he cared, that his control meant he was protecting her, and everyone around her, her mother, her sister, her best friend Carla, they all saw what was happening. They all tried to warn her. But Ana was drowning in her own desperate need to be chosen, to be wanted, to finally be enough for someone. So she planned her own wedding with the same meticulous attention she gave to all her clients, never realizing she was orchestrating her own destruction. The venue was spectacular. The garden pavilion, with its soaring glass ceiling and walls of windows overlooking the city skyline. 300 guests, cream roses and white orchids everywhere. A string quartet playing softly as people took their seats. Ana's mother crying in the front row, but not tears of joy. No, Maria Martinez was crying because a mother knows. A mother can feel when her daughter is walking into a trap. But what could she do? Ana was 32 years old, determined, convinced this was her moment. So Maria sat there in her elegant navy dress and watched her daughter walk toward heartbreak in a white gown that cost more than most people's cars. The dress was exquisite, custom-made, fitted perfectly to Ana's curves that she had been starving herself to minimize. Because Daniel had made one too many comments about how she should lose weight before the wedding. Her dark hair was swept up in an intricate design, small white flowers woven throughout. She looked like a dream. She felt like she was finally going to be enough. Daniel stood at the altar in his custom Tom Ford tuxedo, and if you had been watching closely, really watching, you would have seen it. The tightness around his mouth, the way his eyes kept darting to the doors, the slight sheen. Of sweat on his forehead that had nothing to do with the temperature. His best man, Marcus, kept whispering something to him, and Daniel kept shaking his head with increasing agitation. But Anna didn't see any of this as she walked down that impossibly long aisle on her father's arm. She only saw her future. She only saw the man she had convinced herself loved her. She only saw the validation she had been chasing her entire life, finally within reach. Her father, Roberto, a quiet man who rarely showed emotion, squeezed her hand so hard it hurt. Later, Anna would realize he was trying to anchor her, trying to give her strength for what was coming. Because fathers know too. Fathers can sense when someone isn't good enough for their daughter. But Roberto had learned long ago that Anna had to make her own choices, even the devastating ones. The officiant, Reverend Phillips, a kind-faced man in his 60s who had married countless couples, smiled warmly as Anna took her place across from Daniel. The music faded. The guests settled into their seats with that anticipatory hush that falls over every wedding ceremony. This was it. The moment. Anna's hands trembled as she held her bouquet of white peonies. She looked up at Daniel, her eyes shining with tears of what she thought was happiness, and she smiled. That trusting, hopeful, heartbreakingly vulnerable smile. And that's when Daniel's face changed. That's when everything that was about to happen became inevitable and unstoppable. His expression shifted from nervous to something else entirely, something cold, something cruel, something that made several people in the front rows actually lean forward in their seats, sensing the change in atmosphere like animals sensing an approaching storm. Reverend Phillips began with the traditional words, his voice warm and practiced, completely unaware that he was about to witness something that would haunt him for the rest of his career. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join Daniel Christopher Reeves and Ana Sofia Martinez in holy matrimony. Anna's smile grew wider. She was so happy she could barely breathe. Marriage is a sacred bond, the Reverend continued, built on love, trust, and mutual respect. That's when Daniel laughed. Not a nervous chuckle, not a gentle laugh of joy, a harsh, bitter sound that cut through the pavilion like a knife. People shifted uncomfortably. Anna's smile faltered. Reverend Phillips paused, confused. And Daniel, this man who had promised Anna forever, who had gotten down on one knee in front of her family, who had made her believe she was finally worthy of love, he looked at her with eyes so cold they could have frozen the sun. "I can't do this," he said. His voice carried across the silent room. 300 people heard every word with crystal clarity. Anna felt the world tilt. "What?" Her voice was barely a whisper, but the microphone the Reverend was wearing picked it up and broadcast her confusion, her rising panic, to every corner of the room. Daniel stepped back, putting distance between them like she was something contaminated, something disgusting he needed to get away from. "I can't marry you, Anna. I'm sorry, but I just can't." The bouquet fell from Anna's hands, peonies scattering across the floor. Her mother gasped. Her father stood up. Carla, her maid of honor, moved toward her, but Anna held up a shaking hand, stopping her. Because surely this was a mistake. Surely Daniel didn't mean what she thought he meant. Surely the man she loved, the man she had given 3 years of her life to, wasn't about to destroy her in front of everyone she knew. "Daniel, what are you talking about?" Her voice was stronger now, but you could hear the desperation creeping in. "We can talk about this. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it, please." And that's when Daniel did something unforgivable. He didn't just leave. He didn't just walk away. He made sure everyone knew exactly why he was rejecting her. He made sure. The humiliation was complete and total and devastating. "Anna, look at yourself," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're a mess. You've always been a mess. I tried. God knows I tried to fix you, to make you into someone I could actually be proud of, but you're too needy, too insecure, too desperate for validation." Each word was a bullet. Each sentence was designed to wound. "I thought I could overlook all your flaws, your anxiety, your constant need for reassurance. I thought maybe, if I pushed you hard enough, you'd become someone worthy of being my wife, but you're not, you'll never be." The pavilion was dead silent. 300 people sat frozen, unable to believe what they were witnessing. This wasn't just a broken engagement. This was character assassination. This was cruelty elevated to an art form. Anna's face had gone completely white. Tears streamed down her cheeks, ruining the makeup that had taken 2 hours to apply. Her hands clutched at her dress, at anything, trying to find something solid to hold on to as her entire world collapsed. "You don't mean that," she whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice anymore. She was already believing him, already internalizing every poisonous word, already accepting that she was exactly what he said she was, not enough, never enough, fundamentally flawed and unlovable. Daniel shook his head with theatrical pity. "I do mean it. And honestly, I'm doing you a favor. You need to face reality, Anna. You need to understand that you're not the kind of woman men actually want to spend their lives with. You're the kind of woman they settle for when they can't do better. And I can do better. I deserve better." Marcus, the best man, grabbed Daniel's arm. "Dude, stop. This is insane." But Daniel shrugged him off. He was on a roll now, feeding off the shock in the room, the power of having an audience for his cruelty. "Look at you," he continued, gesturing at Anna's trembling form. "You can't even stand up for yourself right now. You're pathetic. You know what? I met someone else, someone confident, someone beautiful, someone who doesn't need constant reassurance like a child, someone who's actually worth marrying. Her name is Jessica, and she's everything you're not." The collective gasp from the guests was like a physical wave. Anna's knees buckled. She would have fallen if Carla hadn't rushed forward to catch her. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. But it was. In front of her. Parents, her family, her colleagues, her clients, everyone she knew, Daniel was eviscerating her, destroying not just their relationship, but her entire sense of self-worth with surgical precision. Anna's father was moving now, his face dark with rage, but her mother held him back, both of them understanding that rushing the altar would only make this nightmare worse, would only give people more to talk about, more to remember. Daniel turned to leave, actually smiling now like he had just accomplished something meaningful. He had gotten exactly what he wanted: complete control, total dominance, the satisfaction of breaking someone who had loved him. But he had taken 3 steps, maybe 4, when the main doors of the pavilion opened with enough force to make them slam against the walls. Every head in the room turned, and that's when he walked in. Jun Hyun-ki. If you had asked anyone in that room who the most dangerous man in the city was, if they were honest, truly honest, they would have whispered his name. Korean Mafia. The real kind, not the romanticized version from movies, the kind that controlled entire neighborhoods, entire industries, entire politicians, the kind that made problems disappear so completely it was like they had never existed. Jun was 35, and he had built his empire with intelligence, ruthlessness, and a carefully cultivated reputation for being absolutely untouchable. He wore power like other men wore cologne, and he was walking down the aisle of Anna's destroyed wedding like he owned the place, which, in a very real sense, he probably did. He was stunning in a way that made people's breath catch. Tall, lean, dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. Sharp features, dark eyes that missed nothing, black hair styled perfectly. He moved with the fluid grace of someone who had never doubted his right to take up space, to command attention, to get exactly what he wanted. Behind him, 3 men in similar suits fanned out, positioning themselves strategically. Security or enforcers, probably both. The pavilion had gone from shocked silence to terrified silence, because everyone recognized him. Everyone knew who Jun Hyun-ki was, even if they'd never met him. His reputation preceded him like a shadow, like a warning, like a promise of danger. He walked past row after row of frozen guests, his eyes fixed on the altar, on Anna's devastated form, on Daniel's suddenly pale face. And when he reached the front, when he stood in the space where Anna's father should have been giving her away, he did something that would be talked about in whispered conversations for years to come. He looked at Daniel with such contempt, such absolute disdain, that the attorney actually took a step backward. "You're done here," Jun said. His voice was quiet, but it carried effortlessly across the pavilion. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a fact, stated with the certainty of someone who had never been. Disobeyed. Daniel tried to muster some of his earlier bravado. "Excuse me? Who the hell do you think you are?" June's expression didn't change. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I know exactly who I am. The question is, do you know who I am? Because if you did, you would already be walking out that door and praying I never think about you again." The threat was implicit, but unmistakable. Daniel's face went from pale to grey. Marcus grabbed his arm again, harder this time, whispering, "Urgently." Whatever he was saying, it was enough. Daniel's eyes widened with recognition, with fear. He glanced at June's men positioned around the pavilion. He looked back at June's cold, impassive face. And whatever courage or cruelty or stupidity had driven him to humiliate Anna in front of 300 people evaporated instantly. "I'm leaving," Daniel said, his voice now small, defeated. He didn't even look at Anna as he walked past her, Marcus practically dragging him toward the side exit. And, just like that, the man who had destroyed her was gone, scurrying away like the coward he had always been underneath the expensive suits and practiced charm. The doors closed behind him. The silence that followed was absolute. Anna stood at the altar in her white dress, tears still streaming down her face, completely disoriented, completely shattered, unable to process what was happening. One moment, Daniel was destroying her. The next, he was gone, and this dangerous, beautiful stranger was standing in front of her, looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. June turned to face her fully, and for the first time, Anna saw something in his eyes that wasn't coldness or calculation. It was something warm, something almost gentle. He reached out slowly, giving her time to step back if she wanted, and carefully, so carefully, he took her hand. His hand was warm and steady, and Anna's was trembling so violently she thought she might shatter into pieces right there on the marble floor. John's thumb brushed across her knuckles in a gesture so unexpectedly tender that it made her breath catch in her throat. 300 people watched in absolute stunned silence as this man, this legend, whispered about in fear and fascination. This Korean crime lord who could end lives with a phone call looked at a devastated bride with something that almost resembled reverence in his dark eyes. He didn't speak to the crowd. He didn't acknowledge the shocked faces, the open mouths, the phones that were undoubtedly already recording every second of this impossible moment. He spoke only to her, his voice low enough that only Anna and perhaps the Reverend could hear the actual words, though everyone strained to catch them. "I've been watching you for 6 months, June said, and there was no threat in his tone, only honesty laid bare. "Every Saturday morning, you get coffee at the cafe on 5th Street. You always order the same thing, a vanilla latte with extra foam, and you always leave a $20 tip even though the coffee costs $4. You're kind to everyone, the homeless man outside, the stressed barista, the elderly woman who takes forever to count her change. You smile at strangers. You hold doors. You live your life like goodness matters. Like small acts of decency add up to something meaningful." Anna's eyes widened. She couldn't process this, couldn't understand why this dangerous man had been watching her, why he knew these intimate details of her. Routine why he was here at all. "I saw what you did last month when that bride, the one whose wedding you planned at the Riverside Hotel, when she started crying because her father died 2 days before the ceremony. You held her for an hour. You adjusted everything, moved heaven and earth to make sure his memory was honored in every detail. You didn't charge her extra. You didn't make her feel like a burden. You treated her pain like it mattered." Tears continued to stream down Anna's face, but now they were confused tears, overwhelmed tears, because this man, this stranger, had seen her in ways that Daniel never had in 3 years. He had noticed the parts of her that she thought were invisible, the small kindnesses she offered without thinking, the person she was when nobody was supposed to be paying attention. John's grip on her hand tightened slightly, anchoring her to this moment, to this impossible reality unfolding in front of hundreds of witnesses who would carry this story with them for the rest of their lives. "That man who just walked out," John continued, and now there was steel in his voice. "He spent 3 years trying to convince you that you're weak and worthless and desperate. He systematically destroyed your confidence, your sense of self, your belief in your own value. He made you small because he is small, and small men cannot tolerate being with women who make them feel inadequate. The Reverend had backed away slowly, his elderly face pale with shock and confusion, clearly understanding that whatever was happening here had transcended his authority and entered territory. He had no framework for understanding. Jun's 3 men remained positioned strategically around the pavilion, their presence a silent reminder that this wasn't just an emotional moment, it was a controlled situation, a demonstration of power wrapped in an act of unexpected tenderness. Anna's mother had both hands pressed to her mouth, tears running down her face, but they weren't tears of horror anymore. They were something else, something like desperate hope that maybe, impossibly, this nightmare was transforming into something different. Her father sat rigid in his seat, every protective instinct screaming, but held in check by the recognition that his daughter was being treated with more respect in this moment than she had received in years from the man who had claimed to love her. "I'm going to ask you something now," Jun said, and his voice dropped even lower. "Intimate and serious, and I need you to understand that I'm offering you a choice, not making a demand. You can say no, you can walk away. Nothing bad will happen to you or anyone you care about regardless of your answer. This is entirely your decision." He paused, making sure she was actually hearing him, actually present in this moment despite the shock and trauma of the last 10 minutes. Anna managed a tiny nod, her voice completely gone, her whole body shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. Jun's expression softened further, and for just a moment the dangerous crime lord disappeared, and what remained was simply a man looking at a woman with something achingly close to adoration. "Marry me instead, right now, right here, in front of all these people who just watched that coward try to destroy you. Let me show you and everyone in this room what it looks like when a woman like you is treated the way you deserve." The collective gasp from the 300 guests was like a physical force rippling through the pavilion. Anna's eyes went so wide they looked like they might fall out of her head. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. This couldn't be real. This had to be shock, trauma-induced hallucination, some kind of break from reality, because none of this made sense, none of this was possible. Dangerous men didn't show up at strangers' weddings and propose marriage to devastated brides. This didn't happen in real life. But Jun was still standing there, still holding her. Hand still looking at her with those intense dark eyes that seemed to see straight through every defense, every wall, every protective lie she had ever told herself. "I know this sounds insane," Jun continued, reading her thoughts with unnerving accuracy. "I know you don't know me. I know every logical part of your brain is screaming that this is crazy, and maybe it is, but I also know that you just had your heart ripped out and your dignity shredded in front of everyone you know, and you're standing here wondering if that piece of trash was right about you, if you really are too broken and needy and worthless to deserve love." He stepped closer, close enough that Anna could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle with notes of cedar and smoke. Close enough that she could see the absolute certainty in his expression, the complete absence of doubt or cruelty or manipulation. "You're not broken," Jun said, and his voice carried conviction like a bell ringing true. "You're not worthless. You're not too much or too little or too anything except too good for people who can't recognize what they have. I see you, Ana Martinez. I see your strength, your compassion, your resilience. I see the woman who builds dreams for other people while letting her own dreams die. I see someone extraordinary who's been convinced she's ordinary, and I'm standing here offering you a chance to rewrite this moment, to take back your power, to show everyone, including yourself, that you deserve better than what you've settled for." The pavilion was so quiet you could have heard a pin drop on the plush carpet. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Every eye was fixed on the bride in white and the man in black, on this impossible tableau that seemed pulled from fiction rather than reality. Anna's mind was racing, spinning, trying to grab onto something solid in a world that had become completely untethered from everything she understood. This morning she had woken up nervous but happy, believing. She was marrying the man she loved. 2 hours ago she was having her hair done, laughing with Carla about honeymoon plans. 30 minutes ago, she was walking down the aisle toward what she thought was her future. And now she was standing here in ruins while a Korean crime lord proposed marriage like it was the most natural thing in the world. Why? The word finally tore out of her throat, raw and desperate. Why would you do this? Why me? This doesn't make sense. You don't even know me. I don't know you. This is insane. You're insane. I'm insane. This whole thing is completely insane. Jun smiled, and it transformed his entire face from intimidating to genuinely beautiful. You want honesty? Complete honesty? Anna nodded, incapable of doing anything else. I saw you 6 months ago and I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since. The way you move through the world with grace and kindness, despite everything trying to beat it out of you. The way you create beauty for other people. The way you keep showing up and doing good even when it costs you. I've spent my entire adult life in a world of violence and manipulation and power plays, and then I saw you, and it was like seeing something pure for the first time in decades. He released her hand only to gently, so gently, wipe the tears from her cheeks with his thumbs, his hands framing her face with a tenderness that seemed impossible from someone with his reputation. I'm not asking you to love me, Jun continued. I'm not even asking you to like me. What I'm offering is a business arrangement wrapped in a very public statement. You marry me right now, and you get immediate protection from anyone who might want to use this moment against you. You get respect and status that will rebuild your reputation, and you get space to heal without being defined by what just happened. I get a wife who makes me look less like a monster and more like a man capable of caring about something other than money and power. We can discuss terms, boundaries, whatever you need. But right now, in this moment, I'm offering you a way to transform your worst day into something people will remember as the day you became untouchable. Anna's breathing was coming in short, sharp gasps. Every instinct screamed this was wrong, dangerous, insane beyond measure. You didn't marry strangers. You especially didn't marry dangerous criminals who ran empires built on activities she probably didn't want to know about. This was the kind of decision desperate people made. The kind of choice that destroyed lives and led to terrible consequences and regret that lasted forever. But God help her. Some part of Anna that had been beaten down and diminished and told it was too much and not enough simultaneously for 3 solid years, that part was suddenly screaming something different. That part was saying that she had played by all the rules, been careful and sensible and patient, and where had it gotten her? Standing at an altar in a ruined wedding dress while the man she loved told 300 people she was garbage. Maybe crazy was exactly what she needed right now. Maybe safe and sensible had been her mistake all along. What are the terms? Anna heard herself ask, and was shocked by how steady her voice suddenly sounded. Jun's smile widened. He had been prepared for hysterics, for rejection, for her to run screaming. Her pragmatic question delighted him in ways he hadn't expected. We stay married for 1 year minimum, he said, shifting smoothly into negotiation mode. You maintain your wedding planning business with full autonomy. You have complete control over your finances, your schedule, your life. I don't touch you without explicit permission. We live in the same property, but you have your own private wing. In public, we present as a united front. After 1 year, we can renegotiate or end the arrangement amicably with a financial settlement that ensures you're set for life. No harm, no strings, no pressure. He paused, making sure she was following. And most importantly, anyone who tries to hurt you or use you or diminish you in any way will discover very quickly why people fear my organization. You'll have protection and respect for as long as you carry my name. The offer was simultaneously insane and oddly reasonable. Anna's mind, that same mind that could coordinate 12 vendors and solve 6 crises while keeping a smile on her face during wedding disasters, started actually analyzing what he was proposing. A year of protection while she rebuilt her shattered reputation and confidence, financial security, autonomy, respect, and all she had to do was marry a man she didn't know in front of the same 300 people who had just watched her get destroyed by the man she thought she'd spend her life with. The symmetry was almost poetic. The reversal was absolutely biblical. Anna looked past Jun to the crowd, to her mother's tear-stained face full of confusion and fear and hope. To her father's rigid posture radiating protective fury held barely in check, to Carla's expression of absolute shock mixed with something that looked almost like encouragement, to the faces of colleagues and clients and family members, all frozen in this moment of collective disbelief. She thought about walking out of here alone, devastated, humiliated, defined forever by Daniel's cruelty. Then she thought about walking out on the arm of the most powerful man in the city, married, protected, transformed in an instant from victim to something else entirely. "If I say yes," Anna said slowly, and June's expression sharpened with focus, "I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this because I'm desperate or broken or looking for someone to save me. I'm doing this because it's a smart business decision that happens to come with the bonus of completely destroying Daniel's narrative about who I am and what I'm worth." June's laugh was surprised and genuine and full of admiration. "That's exactly the spirit I was hoping for," he said. "I don't want a grateful victim. I want a partner who understands strategy and isn't afraid to use an unexpected opportunity." Anna took a deep breath, and in that breath, she let go of every safe choice, every careful plan, every rule she had followed that had led her to this disaster. She had been good and patient and understanding, and where had it gotten her? Maybe it was time to be dangerous instead. "Okay," she said, and her voice rang clear across the silent pavilion. "I'll marry you. Right now, right here. Let's give these people something to really talk about." The explosion of shocked murmuring from the guests was immediate and overwhelming, but Jun silenced it with a single raised hand that commanded instant obedience from everyone in the room. His authority was absolute, unquestioned, almost primal in its effectiveness. He turned to the Reverend, who looked like he might faint at any moment. "Reverend Phillips," Jun said with perfect politeness that somehow still felt like a command, "I believe you have a ceremony to perform." The elderly man opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "This is highly irregular," he managed weakly. "The license is for Anna and Daniel, not Anna and—" Jun reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document, handing it to the Reverend with a slight smile. "I took the liberty of having the necessary paperwork prepared. You'll find everything is in order." Of course he had. Because Jun Hyun Ki didn't make offers he couldn't deliver on. He had come here with full intention and preparation, had anticipated exactly how this would unfold, had made sure every legal detail was addressed before he even walked through those doors. Reverend Phillips unfolded the marriage license with shaking hands and stared at it for a long moment, probably trying to find some irregularity, some reason to refuse, but whatever he saw, there was apparently legitimate. He looked up at Anna with concern etched deep in his wrinkled face. "Miss Martinez, are you absolutely certain about this? You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. We can stop right now and—" Anna cut him off with a clarity that surprised even herself. "I'm certain, Reverend. More certain than I was 20 minutes ago, if I'm being honest." The Reverend looked between Anna's determined expression and June's calm confidence and made whatever calculation elderly religious men make when confronted with situations far outside their experience. He sighed deeply, positioned himself at the altar once more, and began again. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join Jun Hyun Ki and Ana Sofia Martinez in holy matrimony." His voice was steadier now, falling into the familiar rhythm of words he had spoken hundreds of times. But this was nothing like those other ceremonies. This was witnessed chaos barely contained in traditional structure. Jun took Anna's hands in his, and the contrast was stark and somehow perfect. His hands were larger, slightly calloused despite his obvious wealth, warm and completely steady. Her hands were still trembling, smaller, softer, marked with tiny scars from years of handling flowers and decorations and the thousand small injuries that came with her profession. Their eyes met and held, and Anna saw something in his gaze that made her breath catch. Not possession, not conquest, not the cold calculation of a man securing an asset, but genuine warmth, respect, and something else she was afraid to name because it felt too big, too impossible, too dangerous to acknowledge. The Reverend moved through the ceremony with increasing speed, probably hoping to get through this before anyone came to their senses or something even more dramatic happened. Do you, Jun Hyun-ki, take Ana Sofia Martinez to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Jun's answer was immediate and firm. I do. No hesitation, no doubt. Just absolute certainty that reverberated through the pavilion like a bell tolling. Do you, Ana Sofia Martinez, take Jun Hyun-ki to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? This was it, the point of no return, the moment where Anna either stepped back into safety and walked out, of here destroyed, or stepped forward into absolute insanity and walked out transformed. She thought about Daniel's face when he called her pathetic. She thought about 3 years of slowly losing herself. She thought about the woman she used to be before she started believing she needed to be smaller to be loved. And she thought about this dangerous, impossible man who had somehow seen her when she thought she was invisible, who valued exactly the things about her that Daniel had tried to destroy. I do, Anna said, and meant it in ways that had nothing to do with traditional vows and everything to do with choosing herself for the first time in years. Reverend Phillips looked relieved to be approaching the end. By the power vested in me by the state, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. For the first time, Jun looked uncertain. He glanced at Anna with a silent question, remembering his promise not to touch her without permission, respecting her boundaries. Even in this moment of public expectation, Anna made a decision. She had already jumped off the cliff. She might as well enjoy the fall. She stepped forward, closing the small distance between them, and lifted her face toward his. Jun's eyes widened slightly in surprise, then darkened with something that looked like gratitude and desire mixed together in equal measure. He lowered his head slowly, giving her every chance to change her mind, and when his lips finally met hers, the kiss was nothing. Like she expected. It wasn't aggressive or possessive. It was gentle, almost reverent, like he was kissing something precious that might break if handled roughly. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb stroking her cheekbone, and Anna felt a jolt of electricity run through her entire body that had nothing to do with performance and everything to do with genuine connection. The kiss lasted maybe 5 seconds, but felt eternal. When they pulled apart, Anna's head was spinning for entirely new reasons. Jun kept her close, his arms sliding around her waist in a gesture that was protective and proud in equal measure. He turned them both to face the stunned crowd, and Anna saw her reflection in the glass walls. A bride in white standing next to a dangerous man in black, both of them looking at the guests with expressions that dared anyone to comment on the absolute insanity of what had just transpired. Jun's voice rang out across the silent pavilion with commanding authority. Let me make something very clear to everyone here. Anna is now under my protection. She carries my name and my respect. Anyone who speaks badly of her, who spreads rumors, who tries to diminish her in any way, will answer to me personally. And I promise you, that is not a conversation you want to have. The threat was implicit but crystal clear. 300 people sat frozen in their seats, phones clutched forgotten in their hands, because recording this moment suddenly seemed like maybe not the best idea, when the man making threats controlled half the criminal enterprises in the city. Jun's 3 men moved smoothly through the aisles, and while they didn't overtly threaten anyone, their presence was reminder enough that this wasn't just drama. This was a demonstration of power. Anna's mother was openly weeping now, her hands clasped in prayer position, and Anna couldn't tell if they were prayers of gratitude or prayers for her daughter's safety or simply prayers that this nightmare would somehow transform into something survivable. Her father had stood up, was moving toward the altar with purpose, and Jun's men tensed slightly until Jun gave them a subtle signal to stand down. Roberto Martinez approached slowly, his weathered face a complex landscape of emotion, fury at what had happened to his daughter, fear of the man now holding her, confusion at the impossibility of the situation, and underneath it all, a father's desperate hope that maybe, somehow, this would turn out okay. He stopped a few feet away, studying Jun with the intensity of a man who had spent his life reading people, evaluating threats, protecting his family. "You're Jun Hyun Ki," he said flatly. Not a question. A statement of recognition and all its implications. Jun inclined his head slightly, a gesture of respect from someone who rarely showed deference to anyone. "I am, and you're Roberto Martinez, Anna's father. I understand you own Martinez Construction, specializing in restoration work on historical buildings. You're known for your integrity and your craftsmanship. Your reputation is impeccable." The fact that Jun knew this, had clearly researched Anna's entire family, should have been creepy, but instead felt oddly reassuring. He hadn't walked into this blind. He had prepared, had understood what he was asking for and what it meant. Roberto's eyes narrowed. "My daughter just got humiliated in front of 300 people, and you show up like some kind of savior offering marriage. What kind of game are you playing?" Jun's expression didn't change, didn't show offense or anger at being questioned. "No game, Mr. Martinez. I saw an opportunity to help someone I've admired from a distance, and I took it. Your daughter is remarkable, and I have the power to make sure the world treats her that way. That's not a game, that's reality." Roberto looked at Anna, really looked at her, searching her face for signs of coercion, fear, desperation beyond what the situation warranted. "Mija, are you okay? Do you want to do this? Because we can walk out right now. I don't care who this man is or what he threatens. Nobody forces my daughter into anything." And that's when Anna felt something break open inside her chest. Her father, who never showed emotion, who was all stoic strength and quiet support, was ready to go to war against the Korean Mafia for her. Daniel had never stood up for her once, but this man, her father, and this stranger, who was now technically her husband, they both saw her value in ways she had forgotten to see herself. "I'm okay, Papa," Anna said, and was surprised to find it was true. "This is insane and crazy, and probably the worst decision I've ever made, but it's my decision. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing me." Roberto studied her for another long moment, then turned his attention back to June. "You hurt my daughter. I don't care what kind of empire you run, or how many men you have. I will find a way to make you regret it." June met his eyes steadily. "If I hurt your daughter, Mr. Martinez, you'll have to stand in line behind me, because I would regret it more than anything else I've ever done in my life." The two men stared at each other, some kind of masculine understanding passing between them that Anna couldn't quite decipher. Finally, Roberto nodded once sharply, then did something unexpected. He stepped forward and pulled Anna into a fierce hug, whispering in rapid Spanish against her hair. "Te amo, mija. You call me day or night, anything goes wrong, anything at all, and I will come for you. Do you understand?" Anna hugged him back, breathing in his familiar scent of sawdust and coffee. "I understand, Papa. I love you too." When Roberto finally released her and stepped back, Maria was there immediately, grabbing Anna's hands and searching her face with a mother's laser focus for truth underneath whatever brave face her daughter might be showing. "Anna Sophia, tell me right now, are you safe? Do you feel safe?" Anna looked at Jun, who stood a respectful distance away, giving her space for this family moment, and then back at her mother. "I don't know what I feel, Mama, but I don't feel unsafe. Does that make sense?" It didn't. Not really. But Maria seemed to understand the distinction. She pulled Anna close, kissing both her cheeks, whispering her own rapid prayers and warnings and expressions of love. Then she surprised everyone by turning to Jun with a directness that matched her husband's. "You take care of my daughter. You give her respect and space and kindness, or so help me God, I will light candles and pray curses on you every day until it works." Jun's smile was genuine and warm. "I would expect nothing less, Mrs. Martinez. Your daughter deserves that kind of fierce protection." The family moment broke as Carla rushed forward, having waited as long as she could stand, and grabbed Anna by the shoulders. "Okay, what the actual fuck just happened? Did you just marry a literal crime lord? Is this real life? Am I having a stroke? Are we all having a collective stroke?" Her voice was pitched high with hysteria barely contained, and despite everything, Anna felt a laugh bubble up in her chest. I have no idea, Carla. I genuinely have no idea what's happening anymore. My entire life just went off the rails in the most spectacular way possible. Carla looked between Anna and June, her expressions cycling through disbelief, concern, and then, slowly, incredibly, a kind of fierce approval. Well, fuck Daniel. Seriously, fuck that guy straight to hell. And fuck everyone who's going to gossip about this. You just married the most powerful man in the city, looking absolutely gorgeous in a dress that cost $12,000. If you're going to have a mental breakdown, this is the most epic way to do it I've ever seen. John cleared his throat gently, drawing attention back to himself and the practical realities that needed to be addressed. The reception is still set up, he said, gesturing toward the adjoining ballroom where Anna had spent weeks planning every detail for a celebration that was supposed to feature her and Daniel, not her, and a Korean mobster. It would be a shame to waste all your excellent planning work. What if we actually gave these people a proper party? Anna stared at him. You want to have a wedding reception right now, after everything that just happened? June's expression was calm and logical. Why not? The food is prepared, the music is ready, the venue is paid for. And more importantly, it sends a very clear message that you're not devastated or destroyed. You're thriving. You made a power move, and now you're celebrating it. Perception matters, Anna. Let's control the narrative. He was absolutely right, and Anna hated and loved him for it in equal measure. The strategic part of her brain, the part that had built a successful business on understanding optics and managing client expectations, recognized the brilliance of what he was suggesting. Don't slink away in shame. Don't let this moment define her as a victim. Own it, transform it. Turn humiliation into triumph through sheer force of will and audacity. Okay, Anna heard herself say. Let's do it. Let's have a wedding reception. June's smile was proud and possessive and warm all at once. He offered her his arm with old-fashioned courtesy. Shall we, Mrs. Hyun-ki? The name hit Anna like a physical blow. Mrs. Hyun-ki. She was married. She was actually married to this man. This was real. This had actually happened. Her hand trembled as she placed it in the crook of his arm, but Jun covered it with his own hand, steadying her, grounding her to this moment, to this impossible reality that somehow made more sense than the life she had been living before. They walked together through the pavilion, past row after row of stunned guests who were just beginning to process what they had witnessed. Jun's men fell into formation around them, a protective detail that made very clear this wasn't just a wedding party. This was a procession of power. The doors to the reception hall opened, revealing the results of Anna's meticulous planning, cream and white flowers everywhere, elegant table settings with gold chargers and crystal stemware, soft lighting that made everything glow, a 4-tier cake that Anna had spent hours designing with the pastry chef, a band set up on a small stage ready to provide sophisticated background music. It was perfect. It was exactly what she had envisioned, and none of it was what she had imagined when she planned it. Jun leaned down to whisper in her ear as they surveyed the beautiful space. You created something extraordinary here. It deserves to be celebrated, regardless of how we ended up here. His breath was warm against her skin and sent shivers down her spine that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with awareness of him as a man, attractive and attentive, and currently holding her like she mattered. The guests filed slowly into the reception hall, still looking shell-shocked, whispering frantically to each other. Phones appearing now as people processed their thoughts and started crafting the messages and posts that would spread this story across the entire city by nightfall. Anna could see the speculation in their eyes, the judgment, the confusion, the fascination. But she could also see something else, respect. Because whatever else this was, it was undeniably powerful. She had gone from jilted bride to Mafia wife in 20 minutes, and there was a kind of dark fairy tale quality to it that would be analyzed and discussed for years to come. The band started playing, an elegant jazz standard that Anna had selected months ago when she thought this reception would be celebrating her marriage to Daniel. June turned to her with a slight bow. Dance with me? It was phrased as a question, always giving her choice, always respecting her agency even in these small moments. Anna nodded, not trusting her voice, and let him lead her to the dance floor. His hand settled at her waist, warm through the delicate fabric of her wedding dress. Her hand rested on his shoulder, feeling the solid muscle beneath the expensive suit. Their other hands clasped together, and Jun began to lead her through a waltz with surprising grace and skill. He moved like someone who had spent considerable time learning to navigate formal occasions, despite the violence and danger of his professional life. "You're shaking," Jun observed, quietly, adjusting his hold to better support her. "I'm terrified," Anna admitted, "because what was the point of lying now? I just married a complete stranger who happens to run criminal operations I don't want to know about, and I'm dancing at my own wedding reception like this is normal. I think I might be having a breakdown." Jun's expression softened. "You're not having a breakdown. You're in shock, which is completely reasonable given what you've experienced today. But you're still standing, still functioning, still capable of making strategic decisions. That's not breakdown, Anna. That's survival. That's strength." The music swelled, and Jun spun her gently, her dress flaring out around her legs. When he pulled her back close, his voice was even quieter, meant only for her. "I know this is overwhelming. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I meant what I said in those vows. I will respect you. I will protect you. And I will never make you feel the way that coward did. You have my word, and in my world that actually means something." Anna looked up into his dark eyes and saw sincerity there that seemed impossible from someone with his reputation. "Why me?" she asked again, needing to understand what had driven him to this moment. "Of all the women in this city, why did you notice me?" Jun was quiet for a moment, thinking, then answered with devastating honesty. "Because you reminded me that goodness still exists. Because watching you move through the world, with grace and kindness despite everything trying to harden, you gave me hope that I wasn't completely lost to the darkness of what I do. And maybe, selfishly, I wanted some of that light in my life, even if it's just borrowed for a little while." The song ended and another began seamlessly, but they kept dancing, kept moving together in perfect rhythm, like they had been doing this for years instead of minutes. Around them, other couples slowly joined on the dance floor, her parents dancing close. Together with worried expressions, Carla dancing with one of Jun's men who had politely asked and looked surprisingly nervous for an enforcer, other guests pairing up, because what else were you supposed to do at a wedding reception except dance, regardless of how insane the circumstances? Anna let herself relax slightly into Jun's hold, let herself stop fighting the impossibility of this moment and just exist in it. Tomorrow, she would panic. Tomorrow, she would question every decision. Tomorrow, she would probably regret everything. But right now, in this moment, she was dancing with a dangerous man who looked at her like she was precious, at a reception she had planned with meticulous care, wearing a dress that made her feel beautiful, and nobody was telling her she wasn't enough. That had to count for something, that had to be worth the insanity of what she had just done. The reception continued with surreal normalcy. Dinner was served, the same perfectly prepared meal Anna had spent weeks planning with the caterer. Toasts were made, though they were awkward and stilted because what do you say about a marriage that came into being under these circumstances? Jun's best man, if you could call him that, a stern-faced Korean man named Min-ho, who was apparently Jun's second in command, gave a brief toast about loyalty and unexpected opportunities that was more threat than celebration. Carla's maid of honor speech was rambling and emotional and kept veering between congratulations and checking if Anna needed an escape plan. Through it all, Jun remained attentive and courteous, making sure Anna had everything she needed, running interference when guests got too intrusive with their questions, presenting a united front that slowly, gradually began to feel less like performance and more like partnership. And Anna found herself thinking dangerous thoughts, wondering if maybe this insane decision wasn't quite as disastrous as it should have been, if maybe jumping off the cliff would somehow impossibly end in something other than complete destruction.